About a year ago, the new administration promised to solve our problems and lead us to a new golden era of peace and prosperity. Well, that certainly has not happened. Instead, our problems have only gotten worse, and chaos is taking over our country. We have actually been left with empty shelves and panic buyers as grocery stores from coast to coast experience massive shortages and consumers face acute price increases. Many are comparing this crisis to the Jimmy Carter era of the 1970s, but back then we did not have such widespread shortages. At this point, no one can deny what's going on. Even the Washington Post is explicitly saying that shelves are getting increasingly barer all across the country, and social media is swamped with pictures of empty grocery shelves. Our new leaders vowed to solve our supply chain problems, but the truth is that their measures have aggravated the situation. In a recent report released by Fox News, shoppers described what they've been seeing at their local grocery stores and supermarkets. When one customer was asked about the empty shelves, his answer was extremely chilling, and many of us will not forget about it anytime soon. "It's like a Soviet store during 1981. It's horrible," he said. Another revealed that the situation reminded him of what happened about 2 years ago. "Honestly, it looks like March of 2020 when everybody was stockpiling and the shelves were bare," he stressed. Millions of grocery shoppers are finding depleted shelves when looking for everyday supplies due to supply chain issues, increasing numbers of infections, and related disruptions, as well as severe winter weather. "It's just a domino effect. Just complete, total domino effect," he added. "It's kind of scary." Before the health crisis, most Americans believed it was impossible for such a dire situation to ever happen in the United States of America. But this is where we are now. Another customer predicted that the worst is yet to come. The man, who identified himself as Larry, told Fox News, "Whatever it is, I know they need to hurry up and get this straightened out because people will be starving. It's gonna get rough if it keeps continuing like that," he said, referring to the supply chain snarls and transportation problems that have been keeping grocers from restocking their shelves. Many shoppers cited a number of items they simply could not find anymore. Everything, meat, egg, dairy, certain breeds were out, most vegetables. It was all fresh items, one man said, as he left a giant grocery store. "A lot of the stores have been down like this," said one woman, who visited multiple stores over the past few days. "I think we're about to have a food shortage. Everything's pretty empty," she continued. Another woman, named Megan, exposed in the interview that her friend warned her not to shop at a local Trader Joe's due to a massive shortfall of supplies. "I had a friend who came before me and said, 'Don't even bother coming in. They don't have any trucks. Nobody's been able to get what they need,' she said. It was the emptiest I've ever seen at Trader Joe's. That's the kind of thing that happens these days," emphasized another shopper. "Without a doubt, things are starting to get really scary and really crazy. In fact, this whole situation is becoming so alarming that even CNN is admitting that U.S. stores all over the U.S. are being wiped clean. Grocery store shelves across America are wiped clean, and they're staying empty as stores struggle to quickly restock everyday necessities such as milk, bread, meat, canned soups, and cleaning products," CNN wrote, adding that disgruntled shoppers have unleashed their frustration on social media over the last several days, posting photos on Twitter of bare shelves at Trader Joe's locations, Giant Foods, and Publix stores, among many others. As the new, highly contagious variant of the virus continues to spread and sicken workers, staffing shortages are being exacerbated in every corner of the nation, and critical functions such as transportation and logistics are being severely disrupted, which is consequently affecting the delivery of products and restocking of store shelves. That's a very worrying situation. If we keep getting back to the same point, what would our country look like during a major long-term national crisis? We should all start thinking about that. Most stores are operating with less than their normal workforces, according to the National Grocers Association, and many of them have less than 50% of their staff members in their posts. One supermarket CEO, Greg Ferrara, said that given current conditions, these interruptions may last for quite some time. He said, "We anticipate consumers will continue to experience disruptions in certain product categories, as we've seen over the past year and a half, due to the continued supply and labor challenges." In fact, labor shortages continue to pressure all areas of the food industry, added Phil Lempart, an industry analyst and editor of SupermarketGuru.com. From farms to food makers to grocery stores, it's across the board. During the health crisis, these operations have had to implement social distancing protocols, and they're not really built for that. And it has impacted production, he explained. At Trader Joe's stores, shoppers have found messages attached to empty shelves noting that weather emergencies have resulted in delivery delays. A big part of the Midwest and Northeast have been struggling with extreme weather and perilous commuting conditions. That's leading people to stock up on more groceries and push consumer demand up at a time that transportation challenges are making it more difficult to move goods in severe weather, thus resulting in more shortages, Lampert outlined. On top of that, climate change is a serious and long-term threat to the food supply. Fires and droughts are damaging crops such as wheat, corn, and soybean in the U.S., and coffee crops in Brazil. We can't ignore it, he added. Meanwhile, grocery chains are alarmed about the new wave of panic buying that's been rippling through the country, so they've been trying to do whatever they can to keep it from getting worse. And many have been coming up with creative ways to keep supplies on the shelves. According to Lampert, food retailers are certainly aware of the empty shelves. Grocers are trying to mitigate panic buying, but that's only worsening the situation. Their main strategy is fanning out products. He explained they're doing this by putting out both limited varieties and limited quantities of each product in an attempt to prevent hoarding and to stretch out their supplies between deliveries. But this strategy isn't really going to make things better. Everyone can see what is happening, and thousands of photos are being shared on social media as we speak. Since Sunday evening, Americans have been exposing the shortages at their local supermarkets and grocery stores, and that apparently has fueled that panic buying frenzy even more. As food supplies get tighter and tighter, prices are going through the roof overall. Grocery prices jumped by almost 7% compared to a year ago, marking the largest increase since 2008, according to a Bureau of Labor Statistics index of prices. And for subcategories such as beef, prices skyrocketed by nearly 21%. At least things are better in the United States than they're in much of the rest of the world. For instance, in Cuba, residents are having to wait for hours and hours in line to be able to shop for some food at all. I spend almost all night here just to buy something. It's not easy. It's a big sacrifice just to be able to eat. Shopper Eldavis Miranda, 47, told a local news outlet outside a market in Havana last week. The homemaker arrived at about 1 a.m. and finally left nearly 11 hours later, just before noon. So we must all be thankful for what we still have. At this point, we can only hope for some short-term relief for the supply chain crisis so that grocers can start to restock shelves while this new wave of infections fades away and warmer temperatures arrive. But none of this will keep inflation from continuing to spin out of control. A new study conducted by CNBC showed that the median income in the U.S. has actually dropped over the past 2 years, despite trillions in government stimulus, while living costs have substantially risen. As consumers pay more for everything from groceries to gasoline, household income is failing to keep pace with a higher overall cost of living, it reported. Since 2020, median income fell 3%, while the cost of living went up by nearly 7%, mostly due to rising housing and medical costs. Over 1/3 of Americans reportedly said that their household financial situation has gotten worse over the past year, despite receiving government checks. As U.S. consumers try to keep making ends meet, they've now gone into more debt than ever before. The report outlines that today, the average U.S. household with debt now owes $155,622, or more than $15 trillion altogether. And that's including debt from credit cards, mortgages, home equity, lines of credit, auto loans, student loans, and other household obligations. The past year and a half was already tough for the millions of Americans who lost their jobs. Now we're faced with rising costs for much-needed items: food, housing, gas, transportation, and medical care. It remains difficult for many to catch up, noted Sarah Rathner, NerdWallet's credit cards expert. This means that most people in America today are just barely scraping by from month to month. Living paycheck to paycheck can bring a disturbing amount of uncertainty for millions of families around the nation, especially at times when economic conditions are rapidly deteriorating and a financial collapse seems imminent. The vast majority of Americans are not going to have any sort of a financial cushion to rely on when things start to go from bad to worse. And given that our population is certainly not prepping for the difficult times ahead, an unexpected and prolonged shortage of food would spark unprecedented chaos in this country very quickly. If you're thinking that this is the worst that can happen to us, you may be surprised to see what is coming next. What we have witnessed so far is just the tip of the iceberg. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, we would like to recommend 7-Year Apocalypse, the latest book from the economic and financial analyst, Mr. Michael Snyder. Don't forget, please turn notifications on and keep tuned to our next videos.